So it looks like Logan has still not paid back the people who got scammed. And bro is doing a follow-up. Let's
6
watch.
months ago, I investigated CryptoZoo, a scam created by Logan Paul and a team of criminals. Oh, and a dude named Jeff, which ultimately resulted in millions of dollars being stolen from fans. I was threatened with a lawsuit for exposing it, but ultimately, Logan Paul decided to thank me instead for his public undressing and announced a $1.8 million refund to the victims. Now, I thought that was a great ending to the story, but I also said this: I'll follow up in the future to make sure that he actually gives that money away. And that's why we're here today. It's been 6 months, so here's a follow-up. Logan Paul has not paid back his victims. He hasn't talked about it since he first announced he was going to pay them back. And what's worst of all, he doesn't seem to have a plan in place to refund anyone. How do I know that? Well, because I've been asking Logan for that plan to refund people the entire time behind the scenes in messages like these. Quote, "Hey Logan, following up on the zoo refunds, when should people expect those? It's been about a month." And then a month later, following up again. People are wondering what's going on. Almost been 2 months. Very frustrating for victims to get promises and then see nothing and get zero communication. And then later, "Hey Logan, following up for a third time, it's been over 5 months since you promised to refund the victims of CryptoZoo over $3 million. I meant to say $1.8 million there. The price of crypto changed a lot, so what this buyback was going to be was constantly changing. I just misspoke there.
Yeah.
Either way, my point was this, quote, "You haven't contacted any of them, nor explained why you haven't done what you said you'd do. Meanwhile, you got public credit for promising to do this." And all of this, Logan didn't respond to, which is odd since he was such a fan of me reaching out to him personally. You know, instead of making things public.
Maybe we could have talked about this if you had reached out to me personally, not my manager, Jeff, who is not me, Steven.
Well, I did reach out to you and I got no response. In fact, the only response I got came on my 4th attempt to reach Logan, but this one came from his criminal defense lawyers. A guy named Jeffrey Neiman emailed me after my 4th attempt saying, "Steven, see inserted on behalf of Logan Paul." Now, to be honest, I had no idea who Logan Paul was until I researched the lawyer and learned that he, quote, "regularly defends individuals and corporations in white-collar criminal litigations." And that's when I realized, oh, that Logan Paul. Why didn't you just say you defended alleged white-collar criminals? Would have saved me a Google search. So I opened up the letter and it read, "We represent Logan Paul. Mr. Paul has informed us of your outreach about the status of the CryptoZoo buybacks. Mr. Paul remains committed to this process. We are working with Mr. Paul to evaluate the best way to achieve this goal. In the meantime, please direct to our attention any further inquiries to Mr. Paul. Thank you for your patience and understanding." Now, that might seem like a good step in the right direction to you. At least we got a response on behalf of Logan. But when I read their response carefully, I realized things were actually worse than I thought.
Really?
Because 2 things are absent from this statement. 1, a timeline for refunds, and 2, a plan for refunds. I mean, you have this abominable statement which says, "We are working with Mr. Paul to evaluate the best way to achieve this goal." So you're still at the whiteboard then? Guys, this is a statement you say when you have no plan or you're stalling, right? You say, "We're evaluating the best options." I mean, that's where Logan was back in January. He was evaluating. Am I supposed to believe 6 months later, you guys haven't figured this out? You've gathered all the boys in the office, brainstorming every single day. How do we refund people? And you don't know? I mean, listen, he had more of a plan, Logan did, back in January. I'm not even sure what there is to even still figure out, because way back then, January 16th, he said, "I've committed more than 1.8 million for those who do not want to wait for CryptoZoo to be completed. Players will be able to burn their base eggs and base animals for their mint price." I mean, there it is. That's the plan. Pay a blockchain dev to code that up and pay the victims their money. That's it. But we see absolutely no sign of that. And it's not for a lack of Logan having the cash. He's on a world tour for Prime right now, bragging about how much money his drink company is making.
In January of this year, we did 45 million.
Oh, only in January?
Yeah.
Wow, 45 million is a good month. Also, January happens to be the same month Logan promised those CryptoZoo refunds. So there's no good explanation for why Logan hasn't refunded his victims yet, because he had a plan back in January, he had the money, but there's even less of a good explanation for why he hasn't explained himself for the delay to either me privately or to the victims publicly, who are just waiting around for months with no word about the status of their promised refund. Now, eventually, I do believe Logan will address this. I think he has to. And when he does, I think he'll probably point to a lawsuit that he's in for the reason he couldn't speak. He had to be silent. Only he's tried this before, and it didn't make a lot of sense then either.
I had to rely on my team. I crumbled internally, and the advice was, while actual legal process was going on because of criminal investigation taking place that CoffeeZilla highlighted in his series, I had to stay silent. And for a year, I'm hounding Jeff. How do we make this right?
All right, let's get this straight. Logan was dying to make CryptoZoo right the first time, but was legally required to be silent until a YouTuber talked about it? Did the judge magically unseal his lips when my video dropped? I'm confused. He's not prevented from explaining himself, and he's certainly not legally prevented from giving people their money back. Even if you want to argue the point that maybe Logan might look more guilty if he promises to pay victims, well, sure, but he already did that though. He said he felt so bad that he was going to refund $1.8 million to the affected people who invested. But actually delivering that promise doesn't add any layer of admission to that guilt. He already said he was responsible. At this point, refunding people is just doing what he said he was going to do from the beginning. No, I think the real reason Logan hasn't paid, if I had to guess, is just because either he does not want to pay, he cannot be bothered to pay on time, or he's just stalling, all of which are unacceptable. Because let me remind you of his promise. Quote, I have committed more than $1.8 million for those who do not want to wait for CryptoZoo to be completed. That is what he said, and the people are tired of waiting, including me. After months of trying to work behind the scenes and ask questions behind the scenes privately to him, I'm just out of ideas, and I'm stuck trying to speak to Logan in the only language I believe he understands. Self-interest. Logan, if I could speak to you for a second. Okay, bring in the camera. This isn't worth your time. Getting publicly flogged like this every 6 months? What are we going to be doing this in a year? No. Okay? It's not worth your time. It's barely worth my time. Just please pay the people back what you owe. Give them a real timeline, a real plan, and then we can all go back to pretending you've changed.
That's crazy. Pretending I'm dead.
This is...
Hold on, I want to see the comments for this video though.
6 months ago...
You can't spell Logan Paul without taking double L's. Bruh. Bro. I mean, his name is just surrounded by L's. That's tough. I mean, they're not wrong. But yeah, like, subscribe. See you guys later. Hope you have a good day or night. And bye. What if he changes his name? That's all I got to say.